Good afternoon, everybody. You can hear me, clap once. You can hear me, clap twice. There we go. There we go. Good morning, good people. My name is John Simpkins. I'm the president and CEO of MDC, based in Durham, North Carolina. We serve 13 states across the Southeast to work to create a South where all can thrive. Thriving means a lot of things. It means access to the necessities of life. Food, clothing, shelter, a job that pays life-sustaining wages. And these are the things that we work towards on our team at MDC. We only do this in partnership with others. We believe in community. And if your community was anything like my community, the way I describe community is it's a place where you have to love everybody, but not be in love with everybody. Because if your community was like any of my communities, there's probably some people you weren't in love with, but you were compelled by your faith or your morals to love them. This is what we do in community. We demonstrate our compassion, our care, our respect for dignity for all. And I can't think of a better place to have the conversation that we're going to have today than right here in the McKinley Washington Auditorium at the Avery Center, especially as we're now about to mark the first year of Senator Washington's passing, someone who meant a great deal to me, and I'm sure to many of you in this room. And then the center that holds this auditorium is the physical manifestation of one of our really valued partners. And I want to bring up Dr. Tamara Butler to talk a little bit about the Avery Center, the work that they're doing here, and the work that she's leading, because I do feel like this institution is poised to be a real anchor for this community in a way that it hasn't been before. Dr. Butler, will you please come up?
Thank you. Good morning or afternoon. There we go. Well, whatever time of day it is, a hello. So I'm Dr. Tamara Butler, Executive Director of the Avery Research Center for African American History and Culture. And so before I give my spiel, I want to make two announcements / warnings. One, if you park behind the building, I am not responsible if you catch a ticket. If you parked on the street, it is 2-hour parking, so pay attention to your watch. So that, and then if you're looking for restrooms, there's one on this floor. The other one is if you go down the stairs and through the classroom, make a left, all your restrooms are there. So I want to give those two first. So one of the things that I like to talk about is, or before I get started, is I ask the question of, is there anyone who hasn't been in this building before? Raise your hand. All right. So for those of you who have been in this building, I hope I can recognize your face because I've been here for 3 years. And so I'm hoping that I've seen you come through our doors before. So the building that you're in has been here since 1868. We are the home of the Avery Normal Institute, which starts in 1865. Why is 1865 important? And there we go. I was like, Civil War, cool. That don't matter to us here as much as emancipation and thinking about the end of slavery, right? That date matters to us because now it starts to move forward the boulder of social change. And so the fact that African Americans post-emancipation decided the first things that they want, in addition to churches, are schools. So the Avery Normal Institute is created. We are a private school from 1865 until 1947. Then we become the Avery High School until 1954, a public high school. The building that you see, things that are original to the building are the pillars, which I borrow from Darren Lee Calhoun, our facilities, outreach, public programming, you name it, he's probably doing it over here in the corner. So he says that they're the pillars that were built on. So those are original to the building. The bricks are original to the building, and they stand as a testament of a few things. I don't really like to use the word resilience because I feel like it gets wielded against African Americans, meaning that you can just kind of throw whatever you want at us and we will always stand up. I don't like that concept because I feel as though we've been through enough. I don't want to be resilient anymore. I want to do something else, right? I want to do more than survive. So thinking about the pillars, we are an archive, a library, a museum, and today you experience us as a community hub. We've always been a community hub since 1990 when the center opened. We've had summer camps, we offer lectures, we offer all kinds of programming, and what's most important is we hold the history of Charleston. Not all of Charleston, but Black Charleston. That matters because so often when we think about civil rights and we think about culture, we get caught up on slavery and forget all of the transitions that community members have made to get us on the other side and through Jim Crow era, right? So if we talk about the NAACP, 1917, we talk about we think about our work and how the NAACP has played a role in the community. We think about how all of our educators have gone on to transform the way that we teach and think in this community and the way that we also become a model for what happens across the South. So it makes sense that we're glad that you came here to Charleston because we get left off the map. We think about Alabama, we think about Mississippi, we think about North Carolina. Depending on what book you read, you think about Florida. But Charleston has always been at the center of civil rights work. And so it makes sense that you would come back to a place where people have always come to figure out how do you develop the sound? How do you develop the blueprint that happens here? And if you're curious about it, you can always book an appointment to come see our archives, which are actually housed right below this room. Our archives extend from the 1800s up until 2015. One of the things that we pick up in 2015, 2016 is a disparities report. We're responsible for thinking about what are the issues here in Charleston and how those are just kind of a microcosm of what's going on in the state of South Carolina, right? So I just wanted to offer those things up to you. We have several programs. We also continue to support teachers through our Race and Social Justice Initiative. Under it, we have the Cynthia McCautry Smith Teacher Award, Society for Teaching and Excellence. We continue to support CCSD as we have a school board member here. But before he became a school board member, we also are always rooted in curriculum. So while I'm excited about this conversation, I hope that we will think about how what we're talking about here also impacts educators who could not be here because they're educating, right? So I welcome you to the space. I hope that you enjoy your time here. If there are breaks, please feel free to go check out our exhibits. Up here is Brittany Washington's Mothers and Daguerreotypes, a Charleston artist. I think there's not a lot of spaces for Black Charleston artists to put their work. We have a tendency to focus on one or two people. Right below us is Hank Herring's exhibit. It's not open, it's not fully open, but the art is up. And then there's also the 19th Century Classroom, which talks about the history of Avery from doors open until the time that we become the Avery Research Center. So I welcome you once again, and we look forward to hearing the conversation for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Butler. The partnership that we have here with the Avery Research Center is indicative of the many partnerships that we believe are necessary in order to achieve some measure of progress on these really tough, intractable issues that one group alone, one person alone can't solve. So we partner with the Coastal Community Foundation. We partner with SCASID, and Bernie Mazik from SCASID will be here as a part of our panel today. We partner with Cajun. We partner with the Duke Social Science Research Initiative, as well as the Low Country Action Committee. And the Kresge Foundation, through their support, has made it possible for us to take State of the South from just a report to a convening that allows us to inform that report, that quantitative research with qualitative research. You all are essentially going to be co-editors of what comes out of these gatherings, because in the facilitated conversation that we'll have as a group, after the panel discussion, we've got people diligently taking notes from our team. And we're looking to see across the South, how are people dealing with issues of affordability in housing? How are they dealing with issues of gentrification and displacement? What does it mean for a place to become more urban or for a rural place to protect the character of that place? And we're concerned about this. We're obviously deep in the numbers and deep into data, but we also know that the way that you make data and numbers come to life is through stories, is through art. So we also have a partnership with South Arts. And it's through that partnership that we're very intentional about not just having art as an add-on to what we do, but to use it as a way to help us understand some of these issues better, to communicate, to reach the broadest audience possible. The way that we've incorporated art into today, I couldn't think of a better way, is to invite Charleston's poet laureate, Marcus Amaker, to both open and close our gathering today. Marcus didn't know it, but I told him when we met earlier today that I've been a big fan of his ever since I got down to Charleston. When I was down here teaching at the law school, he had just gotten down here too, so we overlapped. We got lots of friends in common. He knows about good music and good food, so it's somebody I can hang out with. And Marcus is gonna bring us a good word as we get started. Once he has completed his presentation, I'll call up my panelists to join me up at the front here, and we'll begin our conversation. So Marcus, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
All right, if you are willing and able, will you snap your fingers for me? Nice. So I have to be honest, I'm learning to be more authentic in my voice. And when I was approached about this event, I initially thought about saying no, because I've been at a lot of events like this where we talk, and then you go out in the street and it's the same stuff over and over again. So my only hope is that I don't get invited to an event like this again, because things have actually changed. So this is a poem about Charleston. I'm going to do two poems, but this is the first one that I started writing probably in it feels like 1852. It was a long time ago. When I first moved here in 2003, just getting used to the energy of the city. Back then, I was a little bit wild and going out a lot. But then I deepened my appreciation and knowledge of the city, and I've just learned a lot throughout the years. This is the first poem. It's called The Pulse. We live in Charleston, where the sidewalks scream on Saturday nights and the corners rotate budding musicians with skin-tight dreams, where strings of pearls search for salvation, then sweat out their frustrations on the backs of rooftops, where the homeless sprout like weeds through concrete, seeking $2, a handshake, and a little bit of sunshine, where the humidity chokes you out of your breath, but you still manage to speak to the spit-shine waiters who serve $95 bottles of wine, where 2 blocks away, a $5 pitcher of liquid gold spills on the canvas of sticky floors, where love lingers on cobblestone streets in narrow alleyways, but the smell of sex is the foundation for first and last impressions. I live in Charleston, where shadows are surrounded by the ocean and seeing people gasp for air from knee-deep bills and dirt-cheap thrills, where those with no sense of history's melody sync with the songs of the city's slaves, where the poets scrape stanzas off of street lights, and if we scream loud enough, maybe someone won't be afraid of the dark. I live in Charleston, where church steeples and cranes look over us and multicolored houses house live-in servants, where fast-rising hotels rise above slow-moving clouds that cast floods on the corner of America Street, where parades of one color get one day to celebrate, then hide in the shadows of gentrification, where Gullah cuisine is too expensive for Gullah people. I live in Charleston, where the steady beat of jazz is the beat of our streets and the dialect of our past writes future conversations, where bridges and bike lanes break bread with politics while some of us preach peace with uneducated tongues, where the angel oak tree is young compared to our vanity, where $16 burgers are sold in the middle of a food desert, and all of us want a piece of the pie, where grandmothers sit on porches watching us change while the problems of our city remain the same. We live in Charleston, where the ghosts and yoga studios call themselves holy, where the vintage market calls itself holy, and the whiskey drinkers go to church to feel tender and holy, where potholes and potheads blow smoke through steam-filled summers, and the pandemic was brushed away like palmetto bugs laughing in the face of death, where some of us dream of an underground scene to hold on to the spirit of elevation, where halter tops don't stop in the winter for people with disposable incomes and opposable thumbs, the holy city, where the hurricanes are coming. The hurricanes are coming. The hurricanes are coming. Another Charleston is being built above our heads. Maybe this one won't flood. And a lot of times in the work that I do, I find myself in communities and in spaces with people where you have to over-explain. So yeah, gentrification is one of those things that a lot of us in the room, we get it. Some people don't. This is for them. This is called Of Color. When someone asks you why it hurts the earth to pull one flower from a field of flowers, tell them you are the lilac or the hibiscus, growing and sunbathing in a community of natural color, and you know a lot of kinfolk who have the same roots. Tell them your kind of people are earth people, and if there's anything you know, it's the pain of one of your petals being picked, of your home life being disrupted by fires, bugs, concrete, or men who are too distracted by what's above them, men who are too focused on skylines to notice their dirty shoes walking on sacred ground. So yes, when one of us is uprooted or displaced from the soil that raised us, we feel it. Tell them you would feel it too, especially if the flower looked like you or was anywhere close to the same hue. Thank you all. Oh, I don't even know this.
Thank you, Marcus. I'd like to invite our panelists to come up to the front, please. Y'all are in for a treat. We had dinner last night, and we could have just recorded that dinner and played it for you, because what these three individuals have to say about what's happening in the community right now, I think is important, not only for the purposes of enlightenment, but also movement to action. One of the things that we want to be focused on as a part of these conversations and convenings in Save the South is that they're not just conversations, to Marcus's point. That you leave here with a concrete step that you can take to push this issue along, to make some progress. And this will be the first of several opportunities that we'll have here in Charleston. And I'm joined by Nashonda Hunter, Bernie Mazik, and Richard Habersham. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about what they do. And then we'll have a conversation until about 1 o'clock. Then we'll open it up to a wider conversation that's facilitated with everyone in the room. And we'll endeavor to wrap up by about 1:20, get you out of here by 1:30. So that's what we're going to be working with. And I will turn it over to Nashonda first to just tell us a little bit about who you are, who you people, what you do, and why does this issue of displacement and gentrification matter to you?
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you all here. I see a lot of my peers and colleagues in this space and this holy space, and just want to thank you all for taking time today to join us. I'm Nashonda Hunter. I'm the executive director of the Charity Foundation. We are a nonprofit that serves the Liberty Hill community in North Charleston. Liberty Hill is the oldest community in North Charleston, and it happens to be a settlement for freedmen. It was established in 1864 by Paul and Harriet Trescott, and then later sold to 4 families who still have descendants that live on that property to this day. With the Charity Foundation, we are a faith-based organization based out of Charity Missionary Baptist Church, where my pastor is Reverend Nelson B. Rivers III. We have 4 initiatives: STEM education, affordable housing, workforce development, and financial literacy. And why this is important to me is because I have seen the effects of affordable housing or lack thereof in my own journey here in Charleston, with living here in Charleston. I've experienced my rent going up, but my salary remaining the same. And I know that that is a struggle that several people are experiencing as well. And then not only that, on Liberty Hill, we didn't want our churches to be the newly renovated buildings in our community. We really wanted to make sure that we were supplying a need that was presented to our community.
Thank you. Mr. Mazik.
Good afternoon. I'm Bernie Mazik, President and CEO of the South Carolina Association for Community Economic Development, better known as SCASID. I want to pause, and a theme comes to my mind of coming home. John is coming home. First full-time job that I had out of college was in this building when it was Palmer College. And I'm sure if Dr. Butler walked through the entire history of Avery, Palmer College would be in that. And so I've come home again to my career. Here with Darren Goss, who's the CEO of the Coastal Community Foundation, that birthed SCASID as an initiative that grew into the organization that we have, which we're a statewide nonprofit that supports locally based community economic development organizations throughout South Carolina. We support them. They do the work. They're best suited to do the work because they know the community. They know what's right for the community. They know the scale of the community. So we support those organizations through various means and large buckets. We support them with training, technical assistance, access to capital, and advocacy. The work that we've been doing, and we started the organization with 4 nonprofits, and now there are over 150 organizations and partners throughout South Carolina pushing the agenda of community-based economic development, which is really to help move low income, low wealth, marginalized, whatever label you want to give it, from poverty to prosperity. And that is about building wealth, building assets, building wealth. But again, making sure that the community can sustain that and that it is relevant to the community. We've been fortunate to work with a variety of partners, ranging from the financial institutions, foundations, state government, local government, federal government, all of that to help communities realize their dream of prosperity. Throughout this conversation, you're going to hear us talk about how holistic and comprehensive you have to approach the issue of housing. And housing is one element of that prosperity. It's easy work, but it is righteous work, if I can say that. And I'll pause there.
Thanks, Bernie.
All right, I'm Richard Habersham. I'm from the Phillips community. I'm also the president of the Phillips Community Association. If you ever know anything about Mount Pleasant, Phillips was located on Highway 41. We used to be the only community on that highway before you get to Berkeley County. As I was growing up, he was saying that we were behind God's back. So there was nothing out there. But, you know, over the years, that everybody found us, well, it's pretty nice out there. You got the river, you got the woods, you got hunting. And you're sort of secluded, but you're close to everything. When I got started in community development through Community Foundation, Bernie Mazik, they helped us, organize. But the organizing part came out when wanted to put a water tank in our community. That's when it really started. And we said, whoa, why should we accept other people's trash when they don't want it? And that grew out of, from that point, we got interested in our community. And from that, we found out how historical our community was, that Philip was the second oldest Black community in Eastern Cooper. Scanlonville was first. They was incorporated in 1872. We was incorporated in 1875, and this is documented. And from that, you have all this development around us. Got Dunes West, Park West, Rivertown, and it made us more aware of our surroundings. And would come with all the development, comes back the affordable housing, come back property ownership, come back that your family. This is what Phillips is all about. It's about that family and passing that heritage down in a place to live. The houses is not, we don't have that well, we got something now that $500,000 houses, that the new development, but the old part of Philip, you got trailers, you got modular homes, you got prefab homes, but the biggest thing is quality of life. If you look around Charleston or in the old settlement community, its quality of life means a whole lot. Where your kids can go outside and play or go run around the neighborhood, and that's what Philip is all about, and that's what affordable housing is all about. It's all about that quality of life, and not how much that house worth or how much your property is worth. It's that quality of life. And on that, I'll leave it there.
Thank you. In the way that all good panels work, they're doing my work for me, because Nashonda talked about the church home. Bernie talked about home as a place. And Richard just described the home place and what gives the home place value. This is a question for anybody. So any of y'all just jump in. When you think of the home place now in Charleston, in the Charleston area, what is it that makes it under threat? What is it that threatens those places that people have always called home? that they've come back to or that they've had and now are losing? What are the biggest threats?
Well, I'm going to throw out and start with identity. Home, and as I think of my home, home gives a sense of identity, and I'm not just talking about a house. I'm talking about home. That's why I said coming home. Home gives a sense of, identity and place, that you matter. Home, and I think of our children, to be able to be in a place and in a space where they are affirmed, that they're valued, that they're safe. The house can provide that, but if the house is not in a place of security and affirmation, then you're in hell, actually. So that's what I would begin with. And when that place is at threat, when Liberty Hill is at risk, or Phillips is at risk, that removes a sense of identity and a sense of safety and security. Or when that place is mischaracterized, like the East Side was always characterized as a place of high crime, but I don't recall that being the real East Side. So,
Thank you.
Oh, if you talk about identity, I look at Philip. Like I say, when growing up, you take everything for granted. But when my kids was younger, I lived on Bennett Charles, and my mom lived on Habersham. You know, it's still a little distance. It's walking distance, but it's still a little distance. Put them kids on the bicycle, put them on the sidewalk, they go up there. They knew more to the kids in my neighborhood than I did. And when they come out, I'm a single parent, but they come, on the weekend, they be all over the place. It wasn't no problem. I felt safe letting them go out to the neighborhood. I got another development right across the road from me called Sun Chaser. I look at the kids on my road or on Bobo, when they go to the bus stop in the morning time, they walk together. This other development has got here. They're right by Highway 41. They drive their kids to the bus stop and wait on them. And I look at that and say, well, whoa, they don't trust the place they live? And the kids in my community, well, the parents trust the kids. They all walk together, they go to school together. And that's identity. That people know each other, trust each other, but these new people, they don't even trust themselves, but they want to live in my community. They have no identity. They just have a place to live. They just got a house over there.
And so to piggyback on that, and based on our conversation last night, we don't have any Big Ma's in the neighborhood anymore. So there's no general gathering place. There's no one who's been and had longevity in the community who can say.
Now break down Big Ma. What does that mean?
Big Ma is the woman, not necessarily large in size, but she is the one who knows everyone, all the children. She's the caregiver of the community. And she sits on the porch and she watches the community all day.
Right there.
A perfect example. And so that is what our communities are missing now. I always say a growing community has children. And if you don't have children in your community, or even in your church for that matter, then your church or your community is not going to grow. And so that is the sense of community that we're missing whenever we have transplants moving into these communities who don't understand and the warmth and the wealth that community offers.
And that also, to me, affirms, okay, what's there as valuable? How do we retain the value that's there? Because our master plans and comprehensive plans, of course, are forward thinking, forward leaning, forward looking, but oftentimes they don't pause to say, okay, what that's here that can be incorporated in this plan moving forward. And so the risk there is losing the richness that was part of that community because, oh, that house is so dilapidated. That house needs to go. But, and we talked last night about, well, some of the houses may need rehabilitation so that they can be retained as a part of the fabric of the community so that stories can be told and lessons can be shared.
So how do we connect across that gap between a housing plan that doesn't really talk about building community and creating a place for a big mama and a community that needs all of these elements for it to be healthy and thriving? Why doesn't that show up in policy?
I think we have to look at the economics and economic development or the potential of it. So Big Ma can still travel into the new community. We just have to figure out how do we get her a license to become a licensed daycare provider. You know, we can apply to get her a building, an official building, so that she can still have that community aspect. And now we're driving economic development into the community instead of pushing them out into other neighborhoods.
And it starts with valuing what's there. It starts with a framework of going into a community and being able to, in partnership with the folk that are there, to say, okay, this is important and why. Big Ma is important for these reasons and why. I told the story last night about the neighborhood drunk that was my transportation to kindergarten. And he had a garden that would compete with any highly producing garden. That garden was also part of the feeding system within the community. So it's recognizing those elements of the community that can still be forward-leaning, forward-thinking, but also provides an anchor for sustainability.
Asset-based.
Thank you.
That's to put it in the jargon, right?
Yeah, well, I got a little different take. It's like I said, we got kids in my community, but it's not on the street I live on. It's on the next street. Got one young lady that's about 13 years old. Everybody else is old. But we have kids that grew up in the community. They want to come back. They want to live in the community, but they can't. You know, two things: affordability to build, come in, and lack of property. You know, some you got some heirs property and everything, but you got the property value is so expensive that some of them just can't come back, can't afford to come back. So we got to find a way to bring these young people back, to bring the kids back in the community. If not, everyone on my street is over 65. I think my neighbor's she's the youngest, and she's in her 60s. Everybody else is older. So if we can get those kids back, then we have Big Mama over here. Big Mama can have these kids to come back. But if you don't have the kids in the community, what do you have? You'll have a bunch of old people, and the community is going to die.
Were you going to say something, Shonda?
Hopping on our conversation from last night about the young people moving back into the community, oftentimes they can't afford to. And we also have to talk about community needs and what their desires are from what their community used to look like. I can personally say from experience that, my community currently would like to keep single family homes in the community. That is not currently affordable to those who need it, i.e. young people, young professionals. And so I think that we have to sit down and really come up with master plans where we're taking, into consideration what you and your community want, but also realistic needs of what's affordable in this day and age in order to bring those young people back into the community.
So I appreciate what you said, Nashonda, because you're talking about the conversations that are going on within the community where there are different views of what the future should look like.
Exactly.
There's some people who want to have all single family homes, right? But the reality is that the multifamily dwellings may be more affordable.
Absolutely.
And where those conversations are being had, they're not being had, if that's correct English, they're not being had at the zoning committee meeting. They're being had at the barbershop.
Right.
Or at church, or at picnic or a family reunion. So we're ever present in our thought of what does the future look like. Somehow we need to have recorders every time we have these conversations, because the planning needs to be done for the development is announced. So oftentimes we say for, community change, it's by the time the sign goes up, it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
My mom used to say, while we're sleeping, they're thinking. Oh, I hear a lot of yeah.
Yeah.
So we're sleeping, when I say sleeping, we're about doing our thing, our business, while the plans are being developed. And the thing is, we need to be planning constantly so that when the question is asked or when the opportunity is provided for input on the plan, we can come ready with the plan laid out. This is what we think should be here and why. And so our communities and those of us that are in this room, so much of the plan's already announced, but we need to, and I live in Dorchester County, so, and yes, I'm a Charlestonian but I live in Dorchester County. Ridgeville needs to be planning now for 10 years from now. Jedburgh needs to be planning now for 20 years from now, and so forth. And Sheep Island and Meggett and Roundo need to be planning now for the future. And I mean, the people, these conversations need to then be documented and then prepared to bring forward as the comprehensive plans of the future.
Bernie, your comment makes me think of the comparison. If we make the analogy with what the Center for Heirs Property Preservation does with families, which is basically to get those families to plan for the event when something will need to be done with that property and they can have control over that property. They might want to develop it, they might want to split it up, but they get to choose what that is. But now what I'm hearing you say is that we can do that with communities as well.
We have to do that with communities and with families.
Yeah.
My family, collectively, the legacy left us in Berkeley County was 100 acres. Now, part of that was heirs property, but fortunately, the rest of that is divided up among the heirs. I'm talking to my cousins about sitting down and creating our own master plan for that 100 acres, because I'm trying to do this. If this is Nexton, y'all know about Nexton, right? If this is Nexton development, my family land is right here, right there. So either we're going to be planned on, or we're going to be planned, or we're going to do the plan. So the families need to be having these conversations, because the other part of the housing question is where's the land? Because when we're going to be talking about the housing development, but the question is where's the land to build a house and the housing?
Well, we got the land. Like in Mount Pleasant.
Well,
You in my community, you got acreage over there. We got large lots. We got in Phillips, and then not just in my community. If you go in the 10 Mile community, you go in the Hamlin community, you got large lots of property.
and guess what? A bunch of folk know of that too.
Well, that's the problem. But now, if we take that and plan, just like I told you about earlier about the young people. If these families get in plans, okay, a lot in my community is 12,500 square feet, just about a quarter of an acre. And you can divvy that up and say, okay, this your part, this your part. But here's the problem. Water and sewer in Mount Pleasant, that's $14,000. And this ain't counting the permits and none of the other stuff. You're looking at almost $25,000 on $30,000 just for permits and stuff. That before you even put a shovel in the ground and nothing. And if you own the property, so you're gonna take another $50,000 off of that house. So that $80,000 right there to build a new house. You see that how expensive that gets? So now if like you got some organization, I think affordable housing, they get a break for the water and sewer. They get a break on the permits.
It's still a lot.
Yeah, but even though if you bring that down, you bring that affordability down. So I'm saying you bring it down the way you can do something with that property. And these are the people who they're not making a whole lot, making $30,000, but you got a place that is affordable to them, and then they can, have that quality of life.
Yeah.
I wanted to circle back on the Center for Heirs property. They do an amazing job as far as reaching out to the rural communities for estate planning, will preparation, things of that nature. And one of the things that I wish that we as a community would do more or make more of an effort is to plan for death as much as we plan for birth. Because we do so many things on the front end. We've got baby showers, gender reveal, all kinds of things. But oh no, we don't want to talk about a will. We don't want to talk about whose name is this property going to be in whenever grandma, takes her last breath. And unfortunately, it really, the family members who are left behind, they really get the brunt of that, because then you're arguing between cousins, between who paid the taxes, who paid for the lawn care maintenance and things of that nature. And those are the things that I would like for us to take away from this conversation and make sure that we're spreading the word about, because that heirs property is one of the things that it doesn't plague Liberty Hill, but it's a blessing and a curse for Liberty Hill. Mixon, Oakview Terrace, Park Circle would run over Liberty Hill without it. But thankfully, because there are so many heirs property issues, we've been able to preserve Liberty Hill. And also, just with me trying to purchase property so that we can do development, I've probably been in like probate for the past 2 years, just trying to get one, not even a 0.4 acre lot. And because of all the heirs property issues that we have to go through. So this is you have to have a crock pot mentality in housing, and,
Not a microwave mentality.
no, definitely not.
And if I can, you all mentioned earlier about the costs of infrastructure, cost of permitting, and then you have the zoning that's in there. So we also have to be about policy, and we have to play a role and have our voice shared in the policies of housing. The zoning that says only one house per acre. I grew up in a community that probably had 3 or 4 houses on an acre of land. That was part of the family compound. So if that is what works for that community, who's to say it's not valuable? Who's to say it doesn't work? The cost of infrastructure. Now, this is a pet peeve, bless you. This is a pet peeve of mine. How CDBG funds.
Community Development Block Grant.
I'm sorry, yes. Community Development Block Grant
Translate. You keep going. Yeah.
Has been used to bring water and sewer to areas and through areas, and have not benefited the people who the CDBG funds were intended for.
And that's especially important now that we have American Rescue Plan Act dollars
Correct.
going to water and sewer projects.
Correct. I mean, now the legislature provided by now $1.3 billion of ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan funds, to the State Rural Infrastructure Authority. And that's still not meeting the need of just rural. But I raise all of that because these funds, CDBG, ARPA, others, were intended to help low-income, marginalized communities, or help communities recover from the pandemic. And it's going to be a shame if we look back 10 years from now and we look at some of these communities and they're still in a distressed condition, as distressed as they were before the pandemic. So the policies we have to be intentional about the policies so that when that CDBG funds is used and Brickyard Plantation and others have gotten the water and sewer, but Snowden and Phillips and so forth are still struggling to tap into that I know I'm getting in trouble, but anyway, we'll move on.
Well, you're right, but here's the problem too: is that it's not that water and sewer is not there, or the infrastructure is not there. It's the cost. I mean, in my community, how many people gonna have $14,000 just to get that water and sewer? You know, that's a struggle. But you still need that affordable housing. And like I said earlier, you got all this undeveloped property. The people who has the money is going to develop it when I can't pay my taxes. Imagine if I got 2 acres of property and I'm paying $3,000-$4,000 for taxes and I won't make but $30,000 a year. I'm not going to keep that. I'm going to sell it. So when you do that, now you then take affordability out of the community and the community landlord's character, because that developers are going to come in there. You can put 3 houses per acre, so you got 6 houses over here that worth over $400,000 to $700,000. So you then price my community out of my own community. So
yeah, and the point I was trying to make is that may be the policy now, but who's to say that should be the policy going forward? Shouldn't we work on policies that's going to meet the needs of the folk that needs that service the most? I mean, shouldn't there be a sliding scale on tap-in fees, or shouldn't there be some kind of allowances to help with that infrastructure cost based on income or based on the character and the quality of the community? I mean, our government, they are intentional. They will invest in what they value. So we've got to help them to value the communities that we're talking about.
And I agree. I think that we have to totally do a wash of all the antiquated laws, policies, ordinances that are in place currently, and look at the development and the communities that are current and that are coming, because Charleston is growing rapidly daily. We all know that. So like you said, you can only have 1 or 2 homes on a lot. Like that it's absurd for the amount of cost that land is right now. And then, just looking at the amount of units that we need for housing currently.
This focus on policy, I think, is the right focus, but nobody tweets about policy. People tweet about politics. All they care about is they care about the big thing that CNN's going to cover. CNN's not covering water and sewer right now. There's no breaking news about water and sewer. How do you get people to care enough about the policy when all they're doing is being bombarded with the noise of the politics, which can be distracting? Is there a way to get people to focus on what's happening in their communities and how, and getting them to understand they can actually play a bigger role in shaping that than they can in whatever the political party is going to be doing?
Shirley Chisholm has a quote that says, service is a price that you pay for living on earth. And I think that our well, I can say for my generation, I think we have a disconnect in that in some places. I personally share on my social media whenever I'm attending my Liberty Hill Community Council meetings. And, you know, I get responses like, girl, I'd rather be at happy hour. And I challenge people in my DMs to, you know, give up 1 or 2 days out of the month for something that matters to you. Politics is everywhere. Politics affects every aspect of our lives. And be that education, the roads, our housing, just literally everything. And so if you're not investing in that and have some kind of care or desire to change it, then you're doing yourself a disservice. And what we've seen our parents go through and see the visible changes here in Charleston, that's going to be us telling those old stories in the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, too, trust is a big thing. I live in Mount Pleasant. Well, I live in the county, but I live in the area of Mount Pleasant. I don't want to be a part of Mount Pleasant because of trust. There's point blank trust. In the news lately, they had one of the former council member, he's in the state legislature now, proposed a bill that if you live within a municipality have the right to annex you in without your consent. Think about that now. I live in the area. I have no control if they're going to annex me in or not. Yeah, you know, I mean, some people say, well, y'all get more amenities and all that, but you have to look at it. Getting back to the taxes, getting back to the permits, getting back to all these other things. That's trust. They didn't let us know. Mount Pleasant did it because a lot of our communities over there don't want to be a part of Mount Pleasant, and we fighting back on a lot of stuff. And this is a way to circumvent that. So if you don't have trust, how could you move forward?
And I'll add to, some people don't like it framed this way. Well, there has to be a sense of urgency. When we talk about policy, because what you just said scares the living daylights out of me, that there's a law that's going to empower local government to annex a community, whether they want to be annexed or not. Now, to me, that's urgent. That's a sense of urgency for me. So we have to create this sense of urgency even before the emergency is before us. We have to project out of what this really means, what this is going to, how this is going to affect us in the future, affect our children. So you talk about tweeting about policy. Well, first of all, for me, I got to get some young people to help me with those tweets. You said earlier, you told us last night, or maybe Kareem told me last night, speak in sentences, not paragraphs. Yeah. So I tweet in paragraphs.
That's a problem.
I tweet in paragraphs. So I need help in tweeting in sentences or in catch. But we have to adapt that to social media and create that sense of urgency of both the policies that are coming up, being thought about or being proposed, and the potential policies or the effect of the existing policies that we now have, and how we need to be about changing those policies. That a sense of urgency is what I'd say. We have to be constantly about a sense of urgency.
How do you do that when you really don't know? Answer that you don't want to be involved, but these things come overnight. And when you hit it, it's on either the news or the newspaper.
And you talked about the council. Tell the story about the council meeting.
Oh, which one now?
The one that happened early in the morning.
Yeah.
You've been in a bunch of them.
One that you had to get somebody to go to.
We had a zoning issue in the Phillips community. Philip is 3 lots per acre. And that's what we wanted. Mount Pleasant, this group came in and wanted to change the zoning to 6 houses per acre. And we big on character. We big on how our community looks. So We went to a couple of meetings. It was all right, but he had this meeting at 9:30 in the morning. I was still driving. I was in Aiken. I got a call, said, Mr. Habersham, well, you need to be down here because we're going to have this meeting, zoning meeting. How can I get from Aiken back to Mount Pleasant? And it was about 9 o'clock at that time, and half an hour. So I had to call one of the other guys out of the community. He wasn't working. I said, man, Frankie, you have to go down there. They're having this meeting. We need somebody down there. He did, but if I didn't gotten that call, I didn't know about it, we would have passed it without even knowing it. The committee turned it down. The council still passed it. So we still lost in the deal, but we got a chance to voice our opinion.
But, and you asked the question, well, how can we know about these bad policies, or how can we project ahead? We just have to be everywhere. We have to have a presence everywhere so that we have ears out there hearing even what people are thinking about, what people are talking about, and then bring that back to some mechanism so that we can prepare to counter it before it comes forward, or that we can put forward policies that will make sure that that policy never comes forward. So it's about being everywhere. And talk about Big Mama. We got a bunch of we used to call them the nosy lady, you know. So yeah, we used to call them the nosy people. Well, we need to have some nosy people out there. That child, did you hear what they plan on doing? And take that seriously and say, oh my goodness. So let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm. And one of the great things that came out of the pandemic is you don't have to be in person everywhere. You can stream these videos virtually. Everyone has a YouTube channel, and you can, even if you can't be there in person, you can still have it on in the background while you're handling your business so that you're still aware of what's going on.
Well, let me go a little further too. A lot of things I used to find out about council, Mount Pleasant, North Charleston County, is the council people. You know, I don't know if y'all know Thomasine Stokes Marshall. She just passed lately. A lot of times she was calling at night, Rich, you better be down here, but this is going to affect you. And Miss Johnson over here, you know, she was a council lady, and she did the same thing. We used to have this. We still have the talk on Friday nights and everything, but you learn a lot, and all this was part of that policy, is that learning your council people and learning to have that dialogue. And that's a dialogue. You don't have to like them. You don't have to be to see them in the political field, but you have to be able to talk to them.
What do you mean you don't have to like them?
No, you don't, because but you have to have that dialogue. Well, my council person is Herb Sass. He's a Republican. Every year when we have our community day, Herb, come on over here. You know, we having it. He likes coming over. He likes to eat.
Who doesn't?
And that's such an important point, that sometimes if we consider ourselves progressives or whatnot, well, we can't communicate with the conservatives. That's the only way I've been able to get things done in the legislature. When we started this work, we of course worked with Gilda Cobb Hunter, who pretty much everyone knows, a pretty progressive member of the House of Representatives. And we'd go to Gilda and say, Gilda, we want to try to get this legislation passed. She said, you don't need to talk to me. You got my support. You need to talk to Republicans. And guess what? They're the ones who sponsors our legislation, because we take the time to engage them. So that still happens at the local level. We need to engage those who can move the policy forward and help them understand how valuable that is. So it is about relationships. And we share the vision, again, help to create the value of why this community is important, why these characteristics of this community are important, and why we need to preserve and have money available for home rehab just as much as we have money available for new construction. Policies that support rehab, support reconstruction of housing and political reconstruction, as well as new construction and new communities.
And Bernie, your response sort of anticipates the next question I wanted to ask, which is, in everything that the three of you have said, we see evidence of what we've called at MDC community strength and systemic weakness. So there's evidence here that there's strength in Phillips. There's strength in Liberty Hill. There's strength in the work that SCASIT is doing to give people opportunity. But all of that is occurring in the context of a system in which you have limited access to capital. Your home might not be appraised for the amount that it should be sold for. Any number of other factors. The realtor who might be selling your home might not look like you and might not have much of an interest in selling that home. How do you then square the systemic challenges that you're up against with what the community brings to try to protect that sense of identity? How do you function? How is Liberty Hill going to be successful in the face of these systemic challenges that it's going to confront?
So the history and legacy of Liberty Hill is going to, first of all, keep them sustainable no matter what, regardless. And then making sure that the systems that we have in place, especially through the Charity Foundation, are empowering all across the board. So the financial literacy piece helps out the workforce development piece so that we're having economic empowerment so that our residents can become affordable, or homeowners, not necessarily affordable, but home ownership can be a part of their path.
I'm going to push you on that. So you said the history is going to help it to be sustainable.
Mhm.
If you can tease on that a little bit, but also talk about why Boeing decided to invest in Liberty Hill. What value did Boeing see that they wanted to invest efforts?
Absolutely. So Liberty Hill is one of the closest communities to Boeing, but also we had a conversation, specifically Reverend Rivers had a conversation with the leadership at Boeing, and he challenged them to invest in their own talent here in Charleston instead of moving people from outside of the area into the area. We have a community full of potential skilled learners, people that you can develop who can come to work for Boeing, and it's right down the street instead of having to displace, all these other residents from the community. They invested in us with a $500,000 per year STEM grant initiative where all of our students in our feeder pattern at North Charleston Elementary, Morningside Middle, and North Charleston High receive STEM education. And when those students graduate, they are just a few more training steps away from being certified technicians with Boeing. And so things like that, whenever I say the legacy, because they are a legacy of craftsmen and tradesmen on Liberty Hill. So whenever I mention their legacy, that's what I mean. It's ingrained in them. It's a part of their community. It's, eagerness to learn and build with their hands and develop their community is a part of their history.
So you painted the picture.
Mhm.
You painted the vision for Boeing that met them where they had a need,
Absolutely.
which is a workforce.
Yes.
Well, I got one. You have to know the value of your community. I went to a seminar with AS Property. The question was, what's the difference between dirt and soil? Think about it. What's the difference between dirt and soil? It's the same thing, but it's all in your mindset. Soil is something that is valuable. Dirt is something, you just walk on. But you have to know the value. Everything has value. Your home has value. The properties don't have value. But when you don't take the time out to find the value of your area, then you're sort of lost.
We talked about highest and best use last night, remember? And shifting the understanding and definition of what highest and best use is away from a purely economic calculation. Right? So that might be another way of thinking about how to further shape systems in ways that are going to be responsive to communities.
And I would say we need to start creating a conversation that everyone can see their role in. I was looking through my cheat sheet here on the Housing for All or the Housing Our Future. And I know Craig Logan is here somewhere. Craig, for Charleston County, refresh my memory because I can't find it here. How many units of housing is projected being needed in the Charleston area? It's somewhere.
About 20,000.
Is it? No, I think it's higher. Is it 20 or 50? 40,000 units of housing is needed. That's not what's here now. That's what's needed to house this community. So that's a starting point of a conversation with Republicans, Democrats, independents, corporate, public officials, and so forth, because it's going to have to be a collective conversation. You're going to need the land for those houses, those units to be built on. It's going to need to be the water and sewer. It's going to need to be the workforce, the contractors, the subcontractors. So beginning to start with a vision, a goal, and I would say that 40,000 is probably minimum, a minimum of 40,000 units. And I think that's just Charleston County, if I'm not mistaken. That's not considering Berkeley and Dorchester County, of housing units that's needed. So if you start with that conversation and start talking to all the different players about their role in that conversation, even the role that Liberty Hill is going to play in meeting that need, the role that Phillips and Snowden and Megget, and I don't know, I like the word Megget, so I say that.
That is true, but to me, we need all this housing, but these communities needs the housing. These communities need the way you can develop. So the conversation, even though it be political, you have to go back to these communities and the community leaders and let them know that, all right, you got X amount of people living in your community. You got X amount of kids coming in. They're going to need a place to live. You got this property. You got this family property. What are you going to do? Are you going to let us sit there and grow trees on it? Or you're going to plant, like you said earlier, are you going to plan for the future where your grandkids will have a place to live? Where your grandkids going to stay in this community and make it grow? So you got to come back to the community too. And because some people don't see it the way you see it. I mean, when I say that, they don't see the future. They just see now. What I got right here. If you can project it out, you said 10 years out or 20 years out, and so well, that little child, that little grandchild of yours is going to be grown. You don't want to be in the house, everybody in the house going old. You get on his own. But if you got this property, it's there.
Yeah. So before we open it up to a collective conversation and invite you all into this conversation, I warned y'all last night I was going to ask you these questions. So the first question I want to ask you is, what's an easy win? What's something that we can do right now that's tangible that will move this issue along of giving people access to housing that's going to be within their means?
I'm going first because I got an easy one. What we can do now, those who live in Charleston County, go to county council meeting on the next month, whenever, March 21st, to the finance committee meeting and be there to support this Housing Our Future plan. Is that right, Craig? Is Craig still here? He said thumbs up. Okay, that's the easy
That's
win.
perfect. That's perfect. What else?
He just took mine because I'm on the Housing Steering Committee. That's all right. Yeah, the Housing Trust Fund, but also after the Housing Trust Fund, staying involved and staying committed.
Hey, my thing is going back to the water and sewer, the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And that is a hindrance to a lot of people to build or develop their property. If we can do something with that, lower the infrastructure rate and the permits, I think that'll help out.
And we know that there is funding there now that won't be there in 5 years or 10 years. It's more funding than we'll ever see for that purpose. All right, one more before we open it up. And the other thing we talked about last night is that there are no microwave solutions, right? This is a crock pot issue, as you said, Nashanda. So what's the hard thing? What is the hard thing that's not going to get solved right now? What's the hard thing that's going to require people to put their shoulder in and work for years, maybe even decades to shift
Policy.
policy? Say more about that.
With the people that we have in place in council and certain positions right now, they're not always seeing the end result, the end goal, and what we really need. And we've got a housing committee that supports it, and we've given several recommendations, but we really have to make sure that we're applying a pressure on our council members so that they can support what their constituents need. And that doesn't happen overnight.
My biggest thing is property. We're going to have,
Mhm.
is property. We're going to have a solution with that so we can open up more property that the community that can develop in the community. Without that, you'll have property and no housing.
It's going to be thinking through all of the tools that's going to help us with attainable housing.
Mm-hmm.
And we have tools now like low-income housing tax credits and CDBG funds and so forth. We have a known set of tools now.
Right.
But the hardest thing is that's not the complete toolkit. So we need to think through additional toolkits, tools for the toolkit. And that's hard because folk are so used to doing what they have always done. And you know what they say about that, you get what you get what you already got.
Yeah.
And I'll use one example. We looked at the state's $2.5 billion that they got in ARPA funds. And they took a first stab at that and put it in roads and bridges, infrastructure, broadband, some other things, because they're used to doing that. So we were ready for the second tranche that we could possibly get them to invest directly in affordable housing. We wanted 197 million of the remaining 500 million for affordable housing. Well, before we could even start talking about that, we already decided we put the rest of that in water and sewer. So thinking about alternative tools to help with this and getting policymakers to work on that, that's going to be hard. But we've got to be vigilant about it to try to make that happen.
I appreciate it. And thank you all for opening up this conversation. So now we want to invite you to contribute. And it's not just Q&A. So if you've got a comment you want to make, if you've got a question you want to ask, feel free to do either. All that we ask is that you speak in sentences and not paragraphs. And so if you get a thank you, that means wrap it up, and we're gonna keep moving or get an answer to your question. Yes, sir, in the back here.
So many aspects. I agree with the panel. What is the end? So I would suggest a report, the depth of the disparity report that the Indians in reverse. Start today with the future. This is what it's going to look like in every single aspect of community. When people read that, like I read the disparity report, and that's what I believe we have to do. We have to put it there on our community.
I saw a similar report, not about housing, but about minority business development, because we know that there are disparities and gaps in minority business development. What Brookings did, this report showed what the benefits and the impact would be. For example, if you say the US population is 14% minority, if the 14% minority represented more effectively represent the number of minority businesses out there. The same thing would be true if we provided housing that meets the needs of the entire area. What does that mean? What impact would that have? Economic? What social impact? Educational impact? Affecting crime or affecting, if housing played in that role? I totally agree with you that we need to now dream towards the future and what that looks like, and housing that can house someone making $25,000 a year, or making $35,000 a year, or $50,000 a year. Yeah.
Right. And just to be clear and to inject some data into this, what we see from the work of folks like Raj Chetty at Harvard is the overarching theme that if you want kids to be successful, what we see in analyzing big data is that if they move from a low income community to a higher income community, the chances of them moving out of whatever quintile they are in income are going to increase significantly. We know that part. But what I hear in Liberty Hill, and what I think is more interesting to me in Liberty Hill, is that you're going to say they shouldn't have to move. What if they got to stay wherever they were and they got the investment in those places, and those places also were able to contribute in a more robust way to the economy? So then you get that benefit. Mr. Habersham.
You're right, because what I've seen, hey, well, I want to move from this place, I want to move that, but how come everybody else want to move in where I'm at? I mean, in my community, like I said, we got mobile homes, we got some good looking ones, got not so good looking ones, the quality of life, and folks come in and build $1 million homes. So if we invest in our community and take pride, it's like we had a program, we call it Community Clean Sweep. It was just cleaning the community up. You get the young kids on Saturday morning, you know, trash bags and everything, clean the community, feed them, you have a cookout. We'll see them kids today coming back to the community and seeing how they enjoyed it. But now when we did it, I'm not a violent person, but I did want to knock some of them in the head because they were really rude. but they took away from that pride in the community. They didn't show it at the time, but now they do. So if we put more pride in our community, you know, it invest, the people who are making money, they'll invest more. It's like downtown Charleston on the east side. Those houses were immaculate. Those houses look good. But when the kids and the grandkids got it, that's when they said, "Ah, man, we living over here, we in the hood and all that." They didn't take pride. So pride is a big thing in the community.
I define the east side as a place where everybody want to live now. But why couldn't our communities have the same frame of live, work, play that's being prescribed for Nexton, or prescribed for Carolina Park, or live, work, play on the east side, live, work, play Liberty Hill, live, work, play, and you said pray too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was worship, and then we
Worship.
changed it to pray. Yeah. But I'm with you with the responsibility. It's valuing your community as well. For those of you who know where Liberty Hill is, we're right down East Montague. And with the increased traffic that we have due to School of the Arts, people going to Park Circle, things of that nature, people are speeding like 60 miles an hour down East Montague. Liberty Hill is a walkable community. We have several seniors who walk across the street to the Family Dollar. They're just walking down the street to go to their friends' homes. Mm-hmm. I called Chief Burgess because I've actually personally stopped my car to ensure that a senior has crossed the street safely, because the speeds are so high that someone is, bound to get hurt at some point in time. But he ended up, setting out this little speed cameras and things like that, so that we can just bring more attention. Hey, you need to slow down. I know that this is a thoroughfare in order to get to where you're going.
But should
It's
it be?
still, no, it's
But
still
should it
our
be?
community.
Yeah, should it be a thoroughfare?
No.
Okay.
That's
Because
the
the
whole
last I checked, 526
Mhm.
has a way to get to the old North
It
Charleston
does.
area.
Mhm.
So Montague does not have to be a thoroughfare
Doesn't have to be.
because
but-
that's Liberty Hill community.
Right.
Mhm.
Last I checked.
Absolutely.
We've got some more hands up. Marcus in the back.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's definitely a part of me that supports showing up to council meetings and working within policy. But you know, our political system was built by white supremacists, and it supports white supremacists. So I don't know that I have an answer, or even a question, but it's a thing that keeps ringing in my head. Is like, how much change can we really do within a system that wasn't built for us?
Right.
So in my mind, in a perfect world, which is not going to happen anytime soon, like we just tear the whole thing down. Now, a lot of y'all will not have jobs after that, but it seems like we're always going to be spinning our wheels within a system. We're trying to clean a house that will never be clean.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that? Because when I think about, so my grandmother's cousin was legal counsel for MLK, Norman Amaker. And I'm hearing all these stories about what they went through, but a lot of what they did was outside of the system. You know, like it was meeting with folks in churches, it's pamphlets, it's not being, you know, I mean, of course, they couldn't be online, but that sort of spirit, what that would mean for now, I think is really subverting a system that wasn't built for us, because these policies are always going to be there to bring us down. So that's just a thing that's in my head. I don't know that that's a question, but it's just something that I've been thinking about.
Real quick, I hear you, and I want to speak to something that Bernie said earlier. We're out organized every time. So City of North Charleston just had 5 Black city council members. At this last election, I think we lost 2, and elections are coming up in November, and 2 are not running for reelection. And then now we're having to deal with redistricting in the City of North Charleston. Every time we get to a certain place, then they move the goalposts back. What can we be doing to forward think about how we can play catch up, or, you know, get ahead of the curve?
Yeah.
And that's my.
And so I'll keep pushing on that, because I think, to Marcus's point, the system, it shifts shape in order to meet its intended purpose.
Yeah.
And it's not bound by whatever it said yesterday. It's going to do something that's going to allow it to persist. So how then do you continue to organize and fight in that environment?
Vote. It's like Charleston County had dominated with the Democrats. They lost 1. It took 5 votes on Charleston County to pass anything. 5. Know your candidate, vote. Don't sit under the tree and say, well, they're gonna do what they want to do. You know, pick a candidate, or come up with a candidate that's gonna support your beliefs. And I think that'll help out.
I'm there with Marcus with being a little schizophrenic about, you know, trying to work to help make the system work for us while realizing, you know, the system is designed to do what it's doing. And so I say with that, we have to do both and. So we have to think of what would the system look like that would do what we needed to do, and think through those structures. In the meantime, use the tools in front of you. Dorchester County School District 2 is a totally at-large school district. So any candidate running, the top 3 or 4 vote getters get the seat. So we would have African Americans running and never winning until this last election. And we've had African Americans won on the school board at any given time, but for the last 10, 12 years, we had no African American representation on Dorchester School District until this past election. And we now have one on it. But at the same time, we recognize that in Dorchester too, we need single member districts. So the delegation was petitioned and the delegation went forward. And so I'm pretty sure we'll get single member districts in Dorchester too. So it's both and. I think we're going to have to not necessarily blow it up, Marcus, but think of the alternative system and how we want that to work while we are using the system to move us closer to where we want to go.
Thank you. We've got another question in the room, and then we've got some from online that we want to get to as well, just before we wrap up.
Thank you all for having us. I've heard a lot of accounts of how we've gotten here as a community from past to now. Can you help me understand how, as a small business owner, how economic sustainability doesn't wipe out more than 50% of the issues that we're talking about? Dr. Claude Anderson came up with a lot of different steps, or a few different steps, on how to turn the tides. And regardless as to what we talk about here, the housing, the inability to hold on to your community, in my estimation, it's all driven by sustainable economics. If we empowered and we had an engine to support our Black businesses, our small businesses, you would see a lot of what we're talking about. Affordable housing may not need to be so affordable. There's things that can be done we can be the sounding board for keeping our communities, or creating those infrastructures so our children can see exposure. Knowing what it looks like to go to a 5-star restaurant, living in your city and can't afford it. So there's so many things that we've touched on. It's a melting pot of where we are. But at the end of the day, help me understand how, if we focus on economic sustainability in our communities, how that doesn't wipe out most of the problems we have. Or at least maybe not wipe it out, but push us in that direction, so that finances, which plays such a big part in a capitalistic society. I mean, we can talk about all the social things we want. At the end of the day, if the families are able to support themselves better, everything else kind of trickles down from that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to start with the Liberty Hill model. And the reason why we have 4 initiatives, and the reason why we chose them, is to help the Black family. So STEM education, we believe that every child deserves safe and affordable or high quality public education, number one. You shouldn't have to go to a charter school or a private school, and it's Boeing funded, so you know that you're getting that STEM education infused in that. And then with safe and affordable housing from within the community that you live. But we also have workforce development, where we work with several of the businesses around the area, where you can get trained and get, different certifications so that you can go to work for the Boeings and the Spaywars, because the tech industry and manufacturing industries are on the rise here. And then we also have financial literacy, so that we're teaching you how to be responsible with your money, so that that can have a full circle moment. And it not only affects the parents, but the students or the children as well. And so with that model, we do have an emphasis on economic empowerment and economic stability, but you have to invest in yourself at some point in time with that, and get from under the tree.
What I heard Frank said, and that's Frank, right? What I heard Frank say was both a question but a declarative statement, and to some degree laying out. I'm intrigued with the notion of build with the end in mind. So the end ultimately is for anyone to be able to afford housing or achieve their goals no matter what, if they are economically viable and sustainable. So build with the end in mind. And what I heard is you making a declarative statement. We won't need affordable housing if folk had the income, the empowerment, the financial means to to live anywhere they want to live. Is that, yeah. Okay.
Taking into account that the majority of the society historically has been the goal to be a government. It's been focus on what got us, the truth of what got us. It's been small business supporting, being supported, which in turn trickles over into empowering people or hiring people in their community, which in turn trickles into taking pride into your community. And let's change some of these communities back.
Thank you.
Say something on that. I hear you, but sometimes the small business have to take pride in itself. You know, and I'll show you. I own properties, and I got a roofer. He have done several roofing jobs. You know, I would recommend him to anybody because I know the work he does, and he does quality work. Now, I've had other people that did work for me. I wouldn't recommend them because the quality of their work is not there. So sometimes that small business have to understand that I got to give up quality work, and you wouldn't have to put your name on the billboard. You'll speak for yourself, and like you said, the money would come in. They're like I said, my roofer, he's always got something to do. People call him. He don't go out there and advertise. They call him. So the pride thing comes back like I said earlier about the community. That small business, if they do that, and it don't matter how much it costs, because people pay for quality work. You know, you can be on the high end, and you'll still get it because the quality is there.
I think because like all good conversations, we could continue this, but time indicates that we cannot, and we're going to need to wrap up. But the other thing about a conversation is that I feel like this conversation is generating momentum. And what I would encourage all of you to do as we wrap is to think about what do you do with that energy that you're feeling right now, that impulse to do something, to say something, and carry that into whatever the next step is for you. I couldn't think of a better place to have this conversation than in this room on this place, given what it stands for, and what Dr. Butler was explaining to us at the beginning. But it's not just history. There's a future that's at stake here too. And to be as insistent on thinking about and building the future as we are in resurrecting the past will place us in a much stronger position going forward. So would you please join me in thanking my panelists?
Yeah, that's it.
And as we close out, I'd like to ask Brother Amaker if he would give a benediction of sorts. What's the last thing you'll do? So you don't have to worry about it.
Two quick things that I'll read.
Here you go.
Oh, word. Yeah, thank you. One of the ways that I think, one of the ways that I've chosen to work through the social justice realm is to hear the voices of students. So being in classrooms is important. This is just these two poems are going to be kind of an exhale, but I just encourage you to listen to students as well. I would love to be an event like this with middle school students and high school students, the communities that we are talking about. I would love for them to be in this room as well. This is a sixth grader, I believe. This is just from a poetry prompt. I used to dream about being lighter than I am, but now I feel comfortable in my skin because God made me the way I am, young, pretty, and smart. I used to dream about being skinny, but now I don't care about it because I got a big butt and love my size, and you should too. Anyway, just trying to, the voices of students, it is important. Yeah, sixth grader. This is just an exhale poem. As we've been talking about a lot of things, I think a lot of our energy is kind of wound up right now. This is the time to exhale. And whenever I think about the work that we are trying to do and change, it's important, in my opinion, that we take care of ourselves first. It's kind of a cliche thing, but showing up for these communities means we show up for ourselves. This is called Give Yourself Some Flowers. And in the beginning, God gave your body a checklist. Keep your heart on beat and your lungs dancing with oxygen, not passive to air. Make sure the path of your blood slows down for checkpoints and avoids bumps in the road. Train your nerves to keep a balanced pace and stay within the lines of steady flow. Push forward without putting too much pressure on movement. Remember, return to water when your spirit and its frame are in drought. Treat your body like a well-rounded planet built for all seasons, or pretend you are an adaptable star. Float in the black and stay there if you need to. Save some light for yourself. In other words, rest like the sun does. Schedule some time to stay out of sight when too many people praise your warm energy. Keep in mind all of these things when depression tells you nothing is working. Keep in mind all of these things when it tells you there is no invisible force connecting us, when your veins are stopped by blood clots, when your bones are dry and the water is too quick to boil. Keep in mind all of these things when depression tells you that the soul is like the body, made to be broken, open to deterioration and doubt. Yes, keep in mind all of these things, and remember, even when it seems like the clock isn't ticking, you were made perfectly for this moment in time. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. We will be back in Charleston at the beginning of 2024 for a longer convening, in which we hope to not only continue digging into these issues, but also a broader array of related issues, especially economics, workforce development, that contribute to a thriving community, a thriving South. So thank you very much.
I want to be on the panel with you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
And with you.
Likewise. Yes, likewise. I gotta come over here to and check out the Phillips community.
Oh, it's beautiful. Y'all still have Frank from us?
We ain't had lately to.
That's why we gotta go to like the guy left on last night and said. Find those men and reach out to how are you?
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Good. Good. Yeah. I used to.